Hey everyone, my name is Perry, and welcome back to the Cassette Phase. So welcome to a rainy Friday, and what's supposed to be a rainy weekend overall, here in the den. And for me, rain can be really relaxing. It can make me want to grab a book and settle in on the couch for a couple of hours. Or it can make me want to turn off all the lights in the room and dive into the world of one of my favorite video games for some peaceful adventures in a dark room. But of course, one of the best and most relaxing things you can do on a rainy day indoors is to get comfy and watch a movie or two. And it's been that way since we were kids. You know, rain used to mean that we can't get out on our bikes or play baseball, and we can't go roam the neighborhood. But it also meant that we could relax indoors with a good movie. And that's just what I want to talk about today. 10 of my favorite movies for rainy days or rainy nights. Some go-tos when there's thunder rumbling off in the distance and raindrops tapping on the window. So it may not be raining where you are today, but hopefully you can still find some peace and relaxation with today's video. And maybe even come back to it next time you are in the middle of a rainstorm and looking for something to watch. Either way, it's time for some peaceful rainy day relaxation here in the den. Sound like fun to you? Come hang out. Okay everyone, welcome back to the Ottoman here in the den, where before we dive into 10 of my favorite rainy day movies, we need to do our cassette of the day. And since today's topic is going to be focused so much on movies, I figured the cassette of the day could be an audio cassette. And so I pulled one down that I think is a great rainy day album, actually. It's a great album for any time. One of my favorite albums of all time, honestly, from one of my favorite bands ever. And not technically 80's, although they did release some really good material in the 80's. This particular album comes from 1977, so close, late 70's. So today we've got none other than Fleetwood Mac with Rumors. And I was looking at my cassettes and I was like, which of these do I listen to on rainy days or any time, like I mentioned? But this one jumped out. Of course, you've got the song Dreams, which flat out says that thunder only happens when it's raining. But beyond that little obvious connection, some of these songs just sound like, looking out the window with raindrops falling, or going for a drive down a rain-soaked street. I don't know what it is. And depending on the day and depending on the mood, I could change my mind about that, because there are certainly times where this feels like a great sunshine, sunny day, out on the patio type of album, or great for a road trip. It's just one of those few albums that is great anytime in a variety of settings. And to me, it doesn't get old. To me, this one is timeless. So always been a huge fan of Fleetwood Mac. Stevie Nicks, one of my heroes. I've seen them live several times. And I do like their 80's and even like their 90's material. I like most of it. Ever since they took on the Buckingham and Nicks lineup, I was just a huge fan from pretty much that point on. I do like some of the older stuff with some of the other band members and some of the more blues-oriented stuff too, of course. That's all great. But yeah, when you added Stevie and Lindsey to the already great lineup, that's when it got next level for me. So I figured this would be a good choice for today's cassette of the day, taking a look at one of my favorite musical groups ever, Fleetwood Mac with Rumors. Now, these are not going to be in any particular order, and just to kind of give you a heads up of what kinds of movies sound good to me, like I said, when it's raining outside. You're going to see a lot of like fantasy, including this first movie that I'm going to show you. You're also going to see like some animated stuff and maybe some like, you know, not so much horror. A lot of people are big time into horror on rainy days and nights, and I am too, to a certain extent, but of the 10 that I grabbed today, there aren't really, maybe like one of them could be considered horror. So just kind of whatever I'm feeling like on a rainy day like today. So let's go ahead and get started. So our first movie is one that I watched a ton as a kid, and it fits right in with the types of fantasy movies that I like to settle in with on a comfy, dark, rainy day. And that first one is Willow. And I meant to research beforehand where you guys can watch these, but you know, most of these can be found pretty easily. I'm pretty sure Willow is on Disney+. I loved this movie as a kid, and it still kind of holds up. You know, it's got some great atmosphere to it. Just some really cool, you know. R.I.P. to Val Kilmer, by the way. That's super sad. But yeah, this has got some great creatures in it, some great settings, some really cool music. And I can't exactly explain it. I'll mention it a couple of times in this video today. But sometimes like the sword and sorcery and fantasy, epic type stuff just seems to work well for me on rainy days. So first movie on the list today, Willow. So this next movie is the one that I guess could be considered horror or light horror out of this whole list. And it's just got just the right amount of spookiness, just the right amount of eerie vibes for a dark, rainy evening, I guess. And it's one of my favorite movies of this genre of all time. No surprise here, we've got Poltergeist. Like I said, spooky atmosphere, great 80's scenery on the interiors and the neighborhood, which I've talked about on prior videos. The neighborhood is the same neighborhood from E.T., I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it's that same housing tract. And the sequels work also, of course. Similar vibes on those. But for me, nothing tops the original, especially on a dark and rainy night. If you haven't seen it in a long time and you get an evening like that, turn out all the lights and give old Poltergeist another try. It's another good one. So for this next one, we're going to take a look at our first animated film on the list. And you'll hear me say this a lot. I can't quite put my finger on why this is a great rainy day film for me. You know, I wish I knew that when I saw this in the theaters as a kid that it was raining outside, but I just don't know that. It probably has most to do with just kind of the atmosphere and the art style I guess. Great movie though, for any time actually, but especially for a rainy day. We've got An American Tail. Who doesn't love Fievel? You know, my son's been actually asking to watch this. I need to show him this movie because I gave him my my Fievel Funko Pop recently, and he loves it. So I need to introduce him to the source material here. Hour and 21 minutes, directed by Don Bluth. I know Steven Spielberg's name is attached to this as well. Just a really memorable film. 1987, wow. Yeah, the music, it kind of just sticks with you. And a lot of the Don Bluth animated films had a very similar art style. You know, I'm sure they shared animators and all of that and artists. But a lot of them were just so good. This one's probably my favorite out of the bunch. Especially great on a rainy day. Check it out, An American Tail. Shifting gears pretty significantly for this next one. A quick look at the back of the box tells me that the genre was mystical action fantasy for this one. And just a great movie. Still love watching this one every now and then, and that's Big Trouble in Little China. When I first saw this as a kid, I didn't know what to think of it. It was one of those movies that I was kind of like, okay, you know, my friends said it was awesome. I didn't, you know, quite understand the hype, at least at first. But after catching it a couple of times on cable, you know, you'd be flipping channels and it would come on and you just go ahead and sit and be glued to it for the rest of the time. You start to realize how awesome this movie was. Another classic from John Carpenter. I always loved the box art and the movie poster art for some of these films. You know exactly what time period you're talking about when you see imagery like that. And you can see I got that for $2. Kurt Russell, great as always. One of his best roles. Yeah, kind of a unique one, but you know, very 80s. Just epic and exciting and memorable, and I don't know why, but apparently great for rainy days and rainy evenings. Check it out. So we're moving into the 90s for the next movie on the list. For a film that I just think has that sense of wonder that kind of hits differently on a rainy day or a rainy night, and that's Hook. And I almost grabbed the original Peter Pan movie, you know, the animated classic from Disney. I have the clamshell sitting right there. I almost grabbed it. I was like, you know, between the two, let me go ahead and go with Hook. I didn't have any movies from the 90s on the list yet, so great cast here. Dustin Hoffman, Robin Williams, obviously, Julia Roberts, Bob Hoskins. Great warm atmosphere and feels, just so much nostalgia. I don't know, something about the themes of childlike wonder and staying young at heart that gets, you know, that are central to these stories. They just, that kind of stuff, as you guys know, that's comfy to me. That's comforting. It's relaxing. It brings me peace. And that's probably why I like movies with some of those themes for a rainy day. I don't know. What about you guys? And speaking of childlike wonder and whimsy and adventure, all of those things are here big time in this animated film. And this is our first clamshell VHS tape on the list. And we've got Little Nemo, Adventures in Slumberland. Maybe a little bit less well known on this one, but great all the same. I love the animation and the art style on this. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this story that this is based on is the same story that inspired the Nintendo game, the Little Nemo Nintendo game. That's a really fun game, by the way. I remember renting that one quite a bit. And I'm not sure where this is streaming, but I'm sure it's streaming somewhere. If you haven't ever seen this one, give this one a shot with an open mind. Again, put yourself in that frame of mind of your younger self, and tell me what you think, because of some of the lesser known animated films that I have in my collection, this is actually one of my favorites. So, and again, the atmosphere of the whole thing, just perfect for a rainy day. Sitting on the couch, get yourself a snack and a drink and, maybe a blanket or two and just settle in. Little Nemo, perfect for that. Now for this next one, I'm not going to spend much time on it because I've talked about this movie probably more than any other movie that I've talked about on the channel, outside of maybe like E.T. But you knew it had to be here, the ultimate rainy day movie, The NeverEnding Story. I mean, you want to talk about perfect atmosphere? I mean, the character literally curls up under a blanket, in the middle of a rainstorm, up in an attic, and goes on an adventure in a book. And then you've got all those fantasy elements that I was talking about before, with the great creatures and the great music and the great settings. Yeah, I mean, you guys know this is one of my probably top 5 favorite movies of all time, so I don't really need to say much more about it, other than it's perfect with that rainy day atmosphere. Okay, so for the next movie on the list, let's go with some superhero action, a little bit darker superhero action, at least for the 80s. We've got Batman from 1989. Now I know that I used to watch this on rainy days. This was one of those tapes that I had as a kid. And when I was bummed out that I couldn't be outside with my friends, running amok, and maybe it was during the day and there wasn't anything on TV that I wanted to watch, this was one of the first movies that I would reach for. And I think, as some of the people have mentioned in my comments section, this was a tape that a lot of us had as kids. I think it was a big Christmas present in 1989 or 1990 for the VHS tape. It's something about the music and just the overall feel of the film. In fact, if I was doing cartoons and TV shows for rainy afternoons, Batman the Animated Series would fit right in as well. You know, it's got that similar music, the same kind of colors and hues and shades, and just the way that everything looks and feels. Just great for rainy day movie watching. Still love this movie. Okay guys, I hope you're still with me. We're down to our last two. And like I mentioned, there's going to be a lot of fantasy on this list. It just hits home on rainy days for me. So these last two films are both considered fantasy genre, I would say. This one in particular, we've got an animated film. One of the earlier movies that I can remember seeing. You know, I was really little, pretty sure this was a library rental. And one that I just, immediately liked. The animation style, the music, all of it's just warm and cozy and warm fuzzy vibes all throughout. The Last Unicorn. And I don't know about you guys, but if you were renting a movie at the library, this is one that was always available. But that doesn't mean it's bad. This is actually a really fun movie. Really peaceful and relaxing. Love the animation and the scenery. It's got a little bit of a unique look to it, And the music just fits in wonderfully all throughout this one. And it's colorful and vibrant and bright in places, but for whatever reason, I just looked at this one today on the shelf and I was like, that would be great for a rainy day, rainy evening, pop some popcorn, sitting down with the kids to show them a movie that they've never seen before, but one that I loved all throughout childhood, and that's why I went with The Last Unicorn. And last, but certainly not least, for today's list, we've got a movie that I was thinking about when I was looking at the cover. This is also one of my favorite movies to watch in the autumn. Like in the fall, when the weather first starts to turn cooler, the leaves are falling, you're thinking about Halloween. And a lot of the movies on today's list overlap with that mood and with that vibe. The rainy day atmosphere that I like, the comfy, feelings of watching these movies that are full of like nostalgia and adventure. There's a lot of overlap for sure, but especially with this last movie, Return to Oz. And The Wizard of Oz could work as well. That thinking about it, that's actually another great rainy day movie. But my memories with this one are a little bit, they started off a little bit rocky because we were visiting some friends out of state, and it was one of those situations where, your parents are friends with their parents, but they also have kids, and, you're just expected to be best friends with those kids, like right off the bat. Just go play with go hang out with the other kids, even though you don't know them at all. And you're kind of going through their room and looking at their toys, and you're not quite sure, can I play with any of this stuff? Like, do you have Nintendo? Like, you're just kind of feeling it out. Well, these particular kids were like, hey, we just got this movie, Return to Oz. We should go watch that. And so they took us out to the living room and turned this on. I was like, okay, cool. I like The Wizard of Oz. And keep in mind, I was probably 5 years old, maybe 6, when this happened. And I just remember being freaked out by this movie. some of the stuff in here is a little weird and a little dark for young children. But with that said, I loved it later in life, and I love it now. So much charm in this. And again, this might be the perfect like autumn movie. You know, you got the windows open, it's nice crisp breeze coming in. You know, maybe making some hot chocolate. Sit down and watch Return to Oz. But all of those things can also be said for a rainy day, like we're talking about today. I don't know, but I'd be interested to hear what you guys' thoughts are on this one, if you've seen it, or if you haven't seen it, and you decide to check it out, let me know, because definitely some unique stuff in here, some memorable things, some interesting storytelling items all throughout this one, but it has a very unique charm all its own. You know, and I'm a big fan of movies like Dark Crystal and Labyrinth, and you know, we already talked about Willow and NeverEnding Story today. This is, you know, kind of along the lines of some of those great 80's, you know, fantasy movies with the, by today's standards, you know, outdated effects and the way the creatures are designed and the puppets and all of that. But yeah, I don't know. I still enjoy it, and especially for a rainy day, Return to Oz. And there we are. So I hope that you all enjoyed riding out a thunderstorm with me here in the den today. And if you did, consider subscribing. And also, be sure to like the video, but only if you actually liked the video. But for now, and as always, relax. Enjoy life and be kind. We'll see you in the next one.